Josh, we've been studying evil for 6 months and what it is in the world, and we're finishing up with these videos about Los Banos, where Chuck actually was. And I think it's one thing to hear about it, it's something else when it shows up in your own backyard.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I hope someone preached about that this morning.
They did.
Good. I remember Gary Nicolosi 3 rectors ago
Right.
during 9/11. It was the Sunday morning after 9/11, and he stood up in the pulpit, he's a fabulous preacher, and he said, I had my sermon all done, as Gary and I always do, and he said, and I realized I couldn't use it, because I don't know what to say. And I think this morning is one of those kinds of mornings.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to do this in 3 parts. This video is about an hour and a half. We'll do 3 30-minute pieces, so we have some time for discussion afterwards. Chuck has a lot of insight into this because he was there. Okay, about that. So I'm just going to leave it to them. Chuck, Bob, what, you going to open this thing? And
Yeah, let me start out. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What I thought was start out with the map so you can sort of see what we're talking about here, okay? So the top left, we've got virtually all of the Philippines there, okay? And then if you move over to the one on the right, we can see where Manila is, okay, over on the right. And then the one on the bottom, there's where Los Banos is. It looks like it's a far distance. It's only about 30 miles south
Of Manila.
of Manila, okay? And going back up to the top here, we see the Bataan Peninsula and the island of Corregidor, which was the big base that the U.S. and the Philippines had there. And then if you look on the other side, what I have is some dates here for you, just to give you some context of what was going on. And I'll actually add a couple of dates that aren't there. Japan started war with China in 1937. You want to think about that in terms of how long really the Second World War was going on. Hitler didn't invade Poland until September of '39. Okay, I know that's not the Pacific, but just again giving you context. So Pearl Harbor, December 7th, '41, we all know that day, at least FDR told us it was going to live in infamy. I think it has. But what most of us don't know is 10 hours later, the Japanese attacked the Philippines. 10 hours later, so another real surprise attack. Obviously, they weren't expecting it. We see in March of '42, General MacArthur, who famously said, I will return, which he did, was forced to leave the island fortress of Corregidor there, off of Bataan, and flew off to Australia. In January of '42, that's where Chuck gets involved. He and his family were among the 2,100 people who were interned at Los Banos, the prison camp. Actually, Chuck will tell you they were under house arrest for a while, and then taken to another place that was close by in Manila, and then finally transferred to Los Banos. April 10th of '42, that's the infamous Bataan Death March, where the Japanese captured both Filipino and U.S. troops and went on a 60 or 70 mile march over a few days, and between 6,000 and 18,000 people died during that. There's mixed numbers on that. September of '44, that's when the U.S. came back. That's when the bombers started attacking Manila in the Philippines. October 20th of '44, that's when MacArthur actually returned. And then February 23rd of '45, almost everyone knows about the Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima, but for Chuck and his family, that was also the day that they freed all the prisoners at Los Banos. And then we see here the other dates I put in here. Germany surrenders May of 45. We dropped the atom bomb then on Hiroshima August 6th of 45. 3 days later in Nagasaki, and took the Japanese another 6 days to surrender, which my recollection was we said the next one's Tokyo, although we only had 2 bombs, but of course they didn't know that. So Chuck, why don't you stand up here and tell us a bit about why your dad was over there with your family.
That's a great question, because my mom was even born in the Philippines. My dad went over there. People always ask what part of the military was he in, or missionary was he in the Philippines. Well, he was a school teacher like some of you were, I think. And my mother was. My mother taught at the University of Manila, and which turned into a prison camp. For a while we were there before we went down to Los Banos. And my dad was raised there. My mother was born there. Her dad was an attorney for Benguet Mines. I don't know how many of you have heard of that company in the Philippines, but it was a gold mining company primarily. And my mother and her brother and sister were both also born in the Philippines. Where did my mother and dad meet? Nebraska. Yeah, my granddad was, on my dad's side, was a preacher for the Methodist Church out in southeast Nebraska. And my dad went to both universities there, met my mom. They went back to the islands and stayed until we were liberated. We came back to the States to stay with my uncle. They lived in Rochester. Stayed there a little while, and my dad had homesick for the Philippines, so we went back to the Philippines in 1950. Tried to find some things we remembered from before the war, during the war. We found 3 steps to the back porch, and part of a set of piano keys was all we could find of a 4-story Spanish-style home. And who bombed it? We bombed it. Bombed the heck out of it, like we did the rest of Manila. But it was being used as a Japanese officers' headquarters. Our house was at the time, and they weren't there very long after that. And if you folks have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I also brought some little pads with me if anybody would like to just write me a question that I can't answer with this cold and with my crappy memory until I'll take it home and bring it back to the answer next week. Okay, any questions now?
Well, we're doing this over 3 weeks, so once you see some of the video, you can think of some questions.
Some of the things you may not know. How long have you been a member here, Chuck?
40-something years, 44 years.
That's something you can try to live up to. 40-something years. Can you imagine?
Okay, so let's take a look at the video then.
I probably can't videotape this.
Here you go. It's the sun.
I'm going to stop there. This is sort of like, you know, the serials you used to see when you were young, right, on TV. What's going to happen next week? Well,
That's how you get us back.
that's right. Well said, Ed. So we'll pick this up next week. We'll see the second portion of it, and then after that, we're gonna have a week off for Mother's Day and come back and see the final chapter, the rescue, which is just absolutely amazing. So,
And the bishop will be with us next week.
and the bishop will be with us next week. We might regale her with tales of Los Banos. Who knows? Thank you very much. If you have questions, again, Chuck is our expert. That he knows everything, being only 5 years old when he was freed.
I still got brothers.
But he spoke with his brother Jim, who, as we saw, was on there a number of times. Anything? Okay. Thank you for coming. We'll hopefully see you next week.